Hello and welcome to the Interplex. Marta González is a professor of civil and environmental engineering and city and regional planning at UC Berkeley, and also a member of the physics research faculty at the energy technology area of the Lawrence Berkeley National Laboratory. She is director of HUMNet Lab, where she and her colleagues develop numerical models and computational tools to better understand the interface and interrelated interactions of humans with built and natural environments, as well as complex social networks and socio-technical systems. Originally from Venezuela, González has never lost sight of vast global inequities and has devoted great energies in her research in urban sciences to the development of robust solutions for sustainable cities in both the developed and developing world, through new technologies and cross-cultural understanding. To that effect, she and her collaborators have developed new tools that impact transportation research, have helped discover novel approaches to model human mobility and the adoption of clean energy technologies, and much more. For her expansive and globally impactful work, González has been the recipient of several prestigious awards and recognitions, including the UN Foundation Award, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation Award, the Network Science Society Award, and the Lagrange CRT Foundation Prize, which is awarded in coordination with ISI Foundation in Turin, Italy. In our informative and wide-ranging InterDialogue, recording at the NetSci conference in Boston in June 2026, we spoke about González's inspiring journey from studying statistical physics and working with the oil industry in Venezuela to studying and researching with complex systems pioneers such as Hans Hermann and Albert Laszlo Barabasi, to impacting urban research and socioeconomic policy across multiple sectors and continents. We focused a lot on her deep love, concern, and hopes for Latin America, and for the role that cities and emerging technologies can and do play in sustainable development. Hi, Marta.
Hello.
Here we are at NetSci in
Yes.
Boston. Fun.
Yes, wonderful.
How are you
Anniversary, yes.
Yes. Great. So I want to get started with a little bit of maybe context and background story, I suppose. You're from Venezuela. I believe you studied statistical physics
Correct.
Until master's there. So how'd you get from there to where you are now, doing globally impactful work in network science, urban sustainability, many different things? What's the path from there to where you are now?
Yes, I fell in love with physics early on, so my passion was understanding the phenomena. And I remember I have some concerns about studying physics coming from Latin America, but at that time I really, that was what I wanted to pursue. When I was at the end of my bachelor, I really wanted to keep in physics, but moving towards something more tangible, not the subatomic world or the astrophysics. Then I discovered early the field of complex systems. And that was the perfect fit for me. The type of research we were doing at that time in Venezuela were flow in porous media for oil industry. Then how important these events are that my advisor of the masters in Venezuela sent me to a conference in Mexico. So there are two components important there. Conference, send your student to conference and bring the conferences to different parts of the world. Not only yes. But it was in Mexico. So sometimes you make the knowledge and the networking more accessible by bringing it to different diverse places, not only Europe and the US, for example. And there I met women doing physics that also inspired me, and they were presenting their PhD, and I was accepted for a poster. And that aspect that, okay, they're now doing postdoc, and I, at that time, had not even thought about doing PhD. That was a changing moment. And I went back and looked for scholarships to go to Europe. And my advisor, Hans Hermann, was in Germany, and it was recommended by my mentor from Venezuela. We all belong to this statistical physics community where network science emerged.
Hans Hermann was your advisor in Venezuela?
No, Mariela Araujo is
Okay.
my advisor in Venezuela, and I went to work with Hans in Germany.
Oh, interesting.
And both Mariela and Hans are students of Jean Stanley from Boston University, who is the advisor of Laszlo Barabasi, whose work we are celebrating in this conference. So networking is very important.
I also met Hans Hermann in Brazil last year because that's where he is now.
Exactly.
I didn't realize he was.
I visited. I did a sabbatical in Brazil, connecting to my network through Hans. Oh. Yes, it's all connected.
Indeed, it's all connected. Amazing.
Yes. So and then there at the beginning, because I was coming from the oil industry, Hans offered a topic on soil segmentation and some interesting properties of the soil. And I really wanted to do something different. And we're talking about 2002. And the famous network science paper came in 1998, 1999. So everything was emerging, everything to be done.
It's the right time.
Yes, and I started working on networks and opinion spreading, analyzing election results very early on. So it opened up a set of opportunities, of problems to tackle. That's how I went all the way from basic physics to then more complex system and to network science.
It seems like much of the work you do now, or the majority of it, has to do with individual and collective human behavior and with the interface of, you say, built habitats or built construction?
Yes.
But it seems like underneath everything, there's also sort of a social dynamic driving what you're doing. Also, we've met at Lanet in Uruguay. You gave a talk there about how you want to kind of inspire and bring more opportunity to students in Latin America and developing world countries. So how do you kind of meld these intentions together, being sort of socially driven, but also like rigorous science and urban habitats especially?
That type of interest come from the beginning. When I was in Venezuela studying physics, I was working in slums with women and kids and education after school programs. Oh, wow. And I am a firm believer, so because we have a lot of inequality in Latin America and in Venezuela as well too, then community organization, knowledge and community organization is the way how the resources are better administered, and you represent the community. It's very interesting because I had that as a personal interest, but physics was completely separated from that. Then when I did my PhD, it was contact network of mobile agents and spreading dynamic. It has some application of spreading in social network, but we haven't touched upon the communities and the sustainability, and it was not completely connected. So notice how everything started more theoretical, and little by little I'm moving in one direction, because then I start doing how networks form, what are the properties of the network depending on the rules of the movement. And what brought me to the US is that I needed data to back up my studies. And luckily, Laszlo Barabasi had mobile phone data. One of the first, I would say the first research group in physics that got access to mobile phone data. And my PhD thesis was mobile agents, network of mobile agents.
Perfect fit.
Yes, I moved to do postdoc with Laszlo, and we did some interesting findings in the patterns of mobile phone users. And based on those findings, basically what we did is it would change how you do the transportation models for the city. Because before, people relied on travel diaries. They would ask a representative sample of the population, usually no more than 30,000 people for a 3 million population, to ask them what they did during the day and do some econometric models to map that. Mobile phone data have the challenges that it's sparse, biased, and you don't know the reasons of the movement. But physics can teach you a lot about that. Then when we have these models that come from biased, sparse data to urban mobility, you know when and where the population move. Then all sorts of applications emerge. The first applications we do with that is traffic, because it's as a scientist, it's a fascinating topic you can understand, predict, and control. So then traffic is almost like a sandbox to apply what I was discovering with the phone data. However, notice the trend is that I would get bored if it's not socially impactful enough. I mean, traffic is definitely important, but there is something else I wanted to connect to the population, to the environment, and to the problems we have. Then I was lucky to move to Berkeley, now not only in civil engineering, but in city planning, civil engineering, and the Lawrence Berkeley National Lab. Right. Then the lab gave me all sorts of computational resources and connecting to many more physicists doing applied work in energy. And planning always challenged me, because always we have this feeling that the models are not enough. But then my reinvention of applications in California was, now let's see how we can do these planning models when we are under stress. And the stresses that I am interested on are both of the social aspect. For example, when COVID hit, I had not worked myself in epidemics. I didn't want to be one more person working in epidemics. So I have worked, but not like dedicated to that field. Then I would be, I didn't enter. I had the mobile phone data, but my concern was not to look into the epidemic in itself. You know what I was much more worried about? The economic recession. By people not being able to leave their houses, and the access to jobs, and what would happen, and the resources. So then urban economics, reinvented, because as a physicist we love to reinvent, but seen with the lens of statistical physics and this new rich data. Let's talk about the access to jobs. Let's talk about where are the informal jobs. By the way, 50% of the workers on average are informal in Latin America.
Latin America.
Yes, in Latin America. Then measuring the conditions of workers, and now we just put a proposal on seeing the condition of workers in Mexico and then when they migrate to the US. So by quantifying the differences and the type of jobs they have in one side or the other and the skills they developed, it would be a good way to, you measure it, then you try to equalize. If you are not measuring the difference, you cannot even think on how to start. Of course, this is a scientist way. You have to measure, being true to my origin as a physicist. Then that is one sort of topics, resiliency towards economic shocks and resiliency in general to jobs conditions.
Just one clarification, the mobile data that's driving much of your research, that's global data, or it's just from the US?
Yes, no. I found collaborators at Berkeley, and I hired postdocs with interest in working with Latin American.
Yeah.
So we got access to 4 countries in Latin America and everything. I have worked with data from Europe, Latin America, Africa, and a lot of the US, but certain topics are just thought for
China as well, right? Some cities
China,
in China,
yes,
yeah,
also China, yes. Basically, when COVID hit, I had students all over the world, and we wanted to measure things in the context of COVID, and then I was able to collect 11 cities through the world, from China to the US to Europe to Latin America and Africa. Then that is one aspect, and the other aspect is the interactions of humans with the natural environment. And being in California, we have all the challenges of having volatile weather so that we have atmospheric rivers, we have drought, we have wildfires, we want to go electric. Then there is all sorts of reliability of electricity access, and even the power grid sometimes is causing the wildfire. So it's a whole compound risk effects, which is perfect to study with the complex system length, and to combine experts from the different areas. So that part of climate adaptation and resilience is the other topic I start doing. Still always bringing the fact that in any city, I know how many we are. If we are displaced due to evacuations, we know where the jobs are, so we need to plan for the movement. So I keep my core contribution to the topics and invent new applications beyond just the low-hanging fruit, let's say, that would be traffic.
And you feel physics is always kind of at the fundamental of the work you're doing? Is it still at the basis, or has it become specifically data science?
It's a very good question, because a friend, Cesar Hidalgo, always says that we are physicists with identity crisis, which is every applied physicist. So honestly, what we learn during the bachelor and in our qualifying exams, sometimes we have great eureka moments in which we can apply something that comes from physics and to measure it in the socio-technical system. Like a famous metric we do, the radius of gyration came from polymer physics, and it is super used now in the mobility world. There is always beauty, because physics is to describe nature, and then the tools are great to work with complex systems in general. But we also need to learn a lot of the new discipline we're at. Sure. And there are moments in which the physics tools are not enough or not useful. But what I would think we keep is the training. As a physicist, you are a scientist to solve a problem through understanding. And that is valuable, even if it's not the core subjects we learn in physics.
It's like a guiding methodology.
Yes, it's the methodology.
Yeah, absolutely. So, well, that's a really great kind of overview of what you do. So much of what your research, specific research, is known for is cities, sustainable cities. Let's say, what's your vision, and where are you trying to impact most? I know you were saying you were connecting between different continents. You certainly have given a lot of focus to Latin America still, but what are some of the things that you're looking at most? And I'm always quite curious, what kind of cultural differences are you finding in terms of things like mobility or energy usage or waste management? What are some of the trends that you're finding and differences, and where do you think is the most fertile ground to have a positive impact?
Yes, that's a great question. The opportunity that we can have for doing impact is the fact that when we in the urban planning field, there has been a lot of study of one city at a time, and you deal with all the policies, all the characteristics, and so on. However, it's very interesting when we are able to analyze 56 cities at a time. That is, I say 56 and not 100, because 56 is a manuscript I'm just reviewing. We analyze 56 road networks. Yeah. Then it's wonderful, because as Barbasi likes to say, there is always a lot of randomness in the things that happen every day in the system, but there is also a lot of predictability. And there are some guiding principles. This randomness and predictability allows you to be able to find trends, and the field, what is called city science, emerge. And you can then focus on the differences. So for the typical first works on city science were some power law as a function of the population, but within each population mean, you have a standard deviation that you want to understand. So imagine like thermodynamics of physics systems. So that there, in that field, there is a lot of impact. and beautifully making the analogy of physics that goes through multi-scale. We have been studying as a community the mobility, and we are finding laws there with always in mind the predictability and the randomness.
Yeah.
And you go up the way to cities. And the fact that there is a community now working in these topics makes it a lot of fun. So I would do an analogy like what happened in network science, that is like a core in which different fields emerge, but we all work together in certain topics. Same I'm seeing is happening with urban science, mobility and urban science, and we have like 3 parallel sessions, one every day.
Amazing.
And that's
how long has that process taken to have like the core urban science and then for it to go off into subfields?
My human mobility paper that I did with Laszlo Bravasi got the cover of Nature and created a lot of buzz, similar to less, but analogous to what happened with a network science paper. It was in 2008.
Okay.
So we already are, and then one limitation was that not everybody have access to the data.
I wanted to ask you about that too.
Yes. Again, see the importance of community and conferences. There is one conference that is called the NetMob, Network and Mobility Conference. And there, every year that the conference was done, we have a data challenge. That was incredible opportunity to offer access to the data just by registering to the conference, pitching your project. Everybody had a competition, and we all could work in a common data set that doesn't cost a lot. First, only few people have access to the data. Now it's available for purchase. However, there are some opportunities to have a common data set in which we all work. The reason the companies give access to the data, of course, signing all sorts of non-disclosure agreements and human resource review board, is because science is useful. So converting the data into useful information is a win-win for society. Then that's why taking into account the responsibilities of working with human subjects, there is a lot of good we can do by applying science into these data sets.
It's a bit of a tough subject though, right? Like the actual access to the data and how the companies might be changing their policy, or how only those with the resources to get the data can then work on it. How do you reconcile these things? And also, has it changed in the last years, your access to some of this mobile data?
It has changed positively, because in 2008, when we did that paper, I would say only researchers working at the mobile phone providers company had access to that.
Okay.
And nowadays, the apps of smartphones collect also your location. There are many companies that are using this data for marketing purposes, but they also are eager to find applications on understanding behavior, understanding cities, and those are the companies that nowadays both offer the data for purchase and kindly are sponsors and partners to the NetMob conference, where sometimes we have the data challenges. So it has gotten much better. And during the COVID-19, it was like a important transition point. The epidemic was sit in one location, it started spreading, and we would see how as people move, the epidemic would spread. It became of paramount importance to measure that weighted network of mobility. Then the data became much more available for free in that moment.
Around the world.
Yes, and never so many people was interested on the topic. Some of us has been working for a long time, but at that time it was really many people got interested on that. Do you remember those days in which we were
a real boost for
what
the
do
field
we
as
do?
well.
Yes,
of course. In terms of data, again, I'm trying to think what the best way is to ask, but How would you say would be the right way to manage access to data? Because there are all of these benefits, and maybe it would be good to just ask you to make a kind of a list from your mind what parts of, let's say, computational social science benefit from having access to mobile data, and how that can then benefit the society at large, because people get quite sensitive about data as well. So what could you say to say how beneficial it is to have this kind of data? What parts of society are benefited? You've already spoken about mobility, epidemic spreading, these various huge impacts. Are there other areas that are also very important for having access to mobile data?
So the planning field in general, so that if we want to design how we're going to make our cities grow, it's important to understand how we are going to collectively use the space. So it's like we go, I like to say that in the urban field, we always find the tragedy of the commons. We all go at the same time through the same street, and we get stuck in traffic, and then it's a whole competition for resources. Yeah. Then you have a demand that you need to manage. And that also impacts how we design the growth of our cities. Where are the jobs? Where are the homes? And how much streets are we going to build? So it goes beyond just a traffic problem, and it becomes an urban planning problem with all sorts of applications. And the aspect that we still need to investigate more is the economics of all of this, because then you can start thinking on the main challenges your cities have. And one example is unaffordable housing. Yeah. That is a whole topic that you need to decide why the prices go this way. And it's a competition for space at the end of the day. Where are the different type of jobs? And should we think better in cities that have complex jobs, or what is the right balance on how we occupy the space? Then it becomes very relevant when you start thinking in the economics of the problem. And you need to think with this mobility data and cities in general, you need to think in certain topics you are real time. Post-evacuation, what would be the best ways to evacuate, where people is going to be, but then the long term. If, like in Los Angeles, if we continue building in the wild urban interface, it's not going to work. Okay, and then you expect the city is going to grow, how it should grow, taking into account the environmental limitations. Then all these problems need in my opinion, it needs a social understanding, but also from the angle I'm coming, it needs a quantitative understanding. Those are the type of benefits I think. I'm a firm believer, and maybe I'm biased, is that the benefits by having access to the data to the research community that uses it responsible, that is meaning respecting the privacy of each individual user, are way more benefits than risks.
And you're looking at collective phenomena also through all of this.
Yes.
And also it sounds like you're looking at the very short-term disaster management and the long-term planning, which is really complex. And I would think, especially when you're working at the science policy interface, how are you able to communicate to policymakers how important the long-term planning is, especially? Like what are you able to do with your group? Are you able to see any tangible impacts or policymakers listening once you show them clear quantitative evidence of what needs to be done to improve their cities?
Yes, now because as I mentioned, that first paper of mobility became several years ago, we are going on the, we're having the opportunity to have finally decades of data. Right. And then you can understand, because there was always a limitation. We never get enough data. Only 6 months is not enough to see urban planning changes. Sure. However, one natural experiment, not only for the epidemic spreading, but for the behavior aspect of it, was the COVID-19. Then one topic that in California policy makers are very interested is the vehicles kilometers travel. You give me a person, if you have a car, you tell me how much you travel, and you count one car for those kilometers, that is your vehicle's kilometers traveled per capita. It was thought that if we are working from home, we may have less vehicles kilometers traveled, because it has been measured before that your longest distance of travel is the homework distance. People try to be the shortest, but then because we are competing for a space, that ended up being your longest distance.
That's interesting.
Then, the surprise is that despite we have on average 4 times more people. So it used to be 5% of the people working from home on an average day in 2019. In 2024, the fall, already several years later, we have 20%, measured in 15 US cities. Then we have more people, 4 times. It's a significant amount of people working from home. Vehicles kilometers traveled should have decreased. They have not. Then,
what's your explanation for that?
Yes, we went into the explanation. So we count that people is having 1 more trip per every 2 days, and interestingly, they are shorter. If they had been longer, we would have 8 kilometers per capita more on average in a city. Now we have 5 kilometers more per capita because people have more free time, and they still move around. But then the opportunity is a very interesting opportunity, because if the trips are shorter, we can investigate how to make them non-motorized, for example. So investigating these individual trips. So for sure we saw clear signal, 15 cities, more trips, shorter, are replacing your commuting trip. Right. Now we need to investigate, okay, how we get those trips out of the car. And this is a US study, 15 cities, the more populated combined statistical areas. We are curious now to see what happened in Europe, because if in Europe also the work from home increased, but they have other type of density, other access to transit, maybe we're seeing less vehicles miles travel in Europe. So that is a follow-up study we want to do.
So you're working on that now?
Oh, yes.
And there must be some interrelated things to this. I think you work on with a group for bikes, urban bike,
yes.
Right? So I guess you propose that as an alternative to replace.
That's great. Exactly. All the efforts is towards more sustainable cities, definitely, and addressing unequal job quality and quantifying the difference complexity of jobs in different cities.
Sure.
Again, we enter ourselves in wicked problems with the hope that by calculating things and understanding things and showing things, you can have a first step toward the solution. Yeah. However, sometimes we become sovereign that many times the solution is political, right? Yeah. However, when the policy is ready to be implemented, we have everything measured. Then it's still...
It makes it more possible. There's less reason not to do it.
Exactly.
I suppose,
Yeah, because it's not obvious. I admire my colleagues that were trying to map the entire transportation of a traffic system of a city with only 30,000 people, information on what they say they would do in one day. It's crazy. Much harder. Yes, yes. And at that time, many traffic control and things were not clear, because it was super hard to calibrate those traffic models with very little information. Definitely, by having this, converting this data into useful information, we can do better.
Yeah, you don't have those constraints anymore. So
exactly.
That's great. each city and everywhere you're working is very context dependent, whether it's cultural or economic or geographic or anything. Are there any like general lessons that you're learning from the research, things that you would really encourage, just different energy sources, types of public transport, using bikes? I know you work on deep air, that's another one of your projects, so to foster cleaner air, waste management. Are there any things that kind of you would see as blanket solutions? I don't know, urban agriculture. Are there any things that you've gotten involved in that you think are particular kinds of answers? Or is it very much like a very complex problem, a networks of networks type of situation where you really have to look at each individual case and look at the randomness and the patterns individually?
Yeah, there has been some, as a good scientific way, you were able, just to tell you one example, there was a great lesson from many cities. With a physicist hat, we can come with specific quantities that you can measure in every city. Because the intuition behind the solutions are perhaps the obvious solution that somebody from social science or environmental science already know. If we have sprawling cities and we have no transit system, then you're going to have a lot of congestion. The power of the quantification is that we have, like I tell you, one gamma parameter that we have that in the numerator measures all the volume of cars and their distance, the vehicles kilometers travel of every person moving in one city out of 5, Latin America, Europe, and the US compared. Then you have this quantity divided by the total road capacity. That gamma is a parameter with no dimension, and you can show for every city and the current infrastructure what is a threshold above which your gamma goes into a different state. So we really are able to study the city like a natural system, because you know the real gamma, but then you can perturb the system and do all the values of gamma, and there is a critical point above which you cannot pass. And that gamma, you can, how would you control the experiment? You have your real mobility, that is number of cars per minute in the morning peak. And then you start increasing that. It's not a linear system. It's a non-linear system, and you can do the phase transition. And or how can we quantify? This is a work in progress with Luca Papalardo and the group of PISA. Giuliano Cornacchia is the first author. When we see all the road networks, can we come with a metric that tells me how much they can support diverse routes? Then we call it diversity. Then it's great that always when we have many cities at a time, you still can come with new metrics that allows you to compare them. And then hopefully you can learn from one city to the other. Of course, with the same approach, we could say, okay, given this number of cars, how much public transit we need. And there is where it becomes complex, and it's a little frustrating when we don't have enough investment into transit, right? Because after that, if the cost is too big, and
that's what happens a lot of the time. You have a clear answer, you have a quantifiable, but then there's no investment.
However, we also learn, and I have been also learning to adapt to new solutions. For example, if in the Bay Area, there is not much will to use the transit as in other places, and then because there is not much popular, there is not much investment, and it seems to be absorbing a state on that situation. But what is unique in the Bay Area, if you go to the San Francisco, to the city, there is a lot of autonomous cars. Now, like Uber is a reality here in Boston, there you can call a Waymo as much as an Uber. Then, from the university, we can say, okay, this is the flow, and there has been a lot of research of how the shared cars, like the Uber Uber and Lyft type of cars would serve the existing demand, and many of our students go to optimize the algorithm for Uber or Lyft. But now from the university we can say, if we keep this trend, we're going to have only more cars, and that is serving only the purpose of that provider and those people that can afford those cars.
Right.
But you can think the scenario, given the movement of everybody, what are those cars that can be chained with the transit system? And let's start planning for the social optimum. Imagine for a second, and in our algorithms we can imagine that the system is public. Then you are optimizing for the best solution, integrating the transit system. And everything is quantified. Here is what we have now. Here is how it should be. And this is the difference between the individual optimum and the social optimum. Then now let's make a negotiation.
Sure.
And then we can start thinking in the tariffs and how do we get there. But it's the integration with the public service and looking in the social optimum. That is the usual trend is, okay, let's quantify it first as a first step to make it happen. But in this case, it's great because the autonomous cars need the permission from the city to expand to other cities. So it's very exciting when you are having an urban problem that has not happened yet. Because many cities have traffic and they are like this now. But in this case of the adoption of autonomous cars, which is not fantasy, it's happening in San Francisco. We are trying to do those things in collaboration with the San Francisco County Authority.
That's a really interesting example. So from sort of the trends from the private sector and what you're observing, you're able to then try to adopt it at this difficult science policy interface to then become public, and then have it potentially replicated in other scenarios.
That is our research proposal with the support letter from the San Francisco County Transportation Authority, and my student is super excited to start working on that. So I can
imagine that's potentially very impactful. So it's happening right now.
Right now.
Cool.
And the important is component, I would like to remember that, complex system thinking into the problem. Because some of the problems we discussed were solved as an optimization problem in math, not with the ingestion of all the heterogeneity of the mobile phone data. But then, if you see everybody is very different, our job from the complex system hat is to find patterns in which you have lifestyles and social networks, knowing those aspects, how we solve this optimization problem. So that is what we propose that would be innovative, and the impact is because we need to plan for the growth of these cars and not forgetting the transit system.
It's a very different approach from what's been done in urban planning previously, right?
And engineering, yes.
Yeah, potentially much more sustainable, much more long-term thinking.
Hopefully, yes, of course. It's always believe, no? We always believe that we can innovate in these relatively old problems.
Some of these last things we're mentioning, it makes me curious to ask you, so you're applying complex systems thinking to sustainable cities, or just to really study cities as well. Do you ever think of cities themselves as complex systems and, I don't know, scale-free, superorganisms almost, cities as I've read about them? What are your thoughts on seeing a city itself as this kind of dynamic, nonlinear superorganism?
Yes, 100%. And we were studying some hurricanes, and in a few cities. That one, we don't have so many cities. I think it's four cities, hurricanes in the US. And we see cities where buildings were destroyed, and FEMA released that data set where the buildings were lost in these cities. And that was, let's say, like Hurricane Harvey, maybe around 2010. So we have enough time has passed. We had data from that moment, probably it's closer than 2010, but it was a few years ago. And we could see what the people did with their movement. We could capture when people left, when people came back. And also with Google Street View, you can see if the buildings that were destroyed were rebuilt. Then the question is, what are the social network connections of the places that were destroyed and people could come back, and the ones that did not come back? Because the income component is known. So not surprised there that people that live in a higher income census tract would do better in terms of recovering their houses. But in this case, controlling by income, what is the role of the social network? And then that's open a whole topic of, but you were asking me about complex systems. So the idea is that you see the city go down and then how it recovers. Comparing with that, and yes, today somebody was telling me, that can be related like the microbiome. Right. I told this story to somebody.
A similar trend.
And in this conference, Joseph, friend, Yanxi Gao, mentioned, I was talking to somebody, have you thought in thinking this going down and recovering like a microbiome system? I had not. That was an idea they just gave to me in this conference, and that is a type of analogy. Because yes, it's the city goes with a stress and come back, right?
Yeah,
Let's study several.
It's a shock to the system, and then it recovers.
Yes.
And the scales. I think that's what's so exciting about what you and many of your colleagues do, the things that can exist at the micro scale up to the macro scale and
many
detect
cities.
patterns. Yeah, in many cities. It's very exciting. So you're mentioning some of your current research and some things that are happening going forward. What are some of the things on the horizon? Otherwise, what are you planning for? You were mentioning a project to me the other day also that seems to be combining many different spheres of influence, let's say, including more environmental as well as urban planning.
Yes.
So what are some things that you're excited about and hope to happen in the coming years?
Yes, I think having interdisciplinary teams is a must, because every field is so complex on its own. And then mapping the amount of vegetation with the drought, with how the weather is going to affect us the next fire season in California, and knowing the amount of precipitation is not enough. We need to understand the process. So there are many, particularly in the compound risk of weather or climate-related events, is something that we need the entire team. It's not enough with a network science approach, breaking down the network and that's it. You know, it's really understanding the system with the different expertises is something I am interested. And in California, there is a lot of organizations like the California Energy Commission is interested in these topics, and hopefully the Department of Energy, because at the end it's earth science for the grid. Not to mention what is going on with the grid and the data centers, right?
So these groups are really starting to foster more interdisciplinary collaborations to address these topics.
Yes.
Yeah, that's quite new, right?
Yes, hopefully, yes.
Yeah,
yeah, it's basically to put this proposal together of this multidisciplinary team for the drought and atmospheric rivers and the grid, all that, is I had to leave my comfort zone. And everybody was expert in their field, and I brought them together. And it always feels scary, but I always told to myself, what better than a physicist to be out of your comfort zone? A physicist of complex system, right? Then I can do this. I need to shout out my students because they are really the hidden variables that always has kept me going. In this proposal, I always share with them, this is scary, you can do it, you know, and I was doing all this because it's an interesting topic, but because I want to maintain my group going, right? Then it's really, they are the hidden variable of success, and as Steve Strogat says today, they are doing a lot, much more than the advisor in the particular paper we publish, and that is really super important.
Yeah, and it sounds like they encourage you a lot, but they also have a sort of understanding and openness to a need to take a more say, integrated approach to these kinds of problems? Are
Yes.
you finding that the next generation, your students are more open to this kind of thinking?
Yes,
than
I
previous?
think it's a matching. I like to start believing that the matching advisory student is a very interesting matching, as Duncan Watts says earlier today, that he follow Steve Strogatz to work together, right? I have had several students that they just came to work with me so that we communicate in science, and here is a lot of people communicating their knowledge. There is a click between some of the people that is about to start their careers and some of us that are presenting, or some of our students. So following our interests and the connection of the understanding. And I liked to hear when Duncan was saying, I was saying this professor, I don't know what they were saying. I did not understand. That was so refreshing to hear, because I thought that only happened to me. So probably happened to all of us. But you click sometimes, and that's how research groups grow. That's the best way to grow a research group, out of the common interest and a communication on a particular problem.
Yeah, it's another kind of network, I suppose, that
Yes.
helps complement each other. Yeah, it's, well, in terms of addressing certain existential type of issues, and a lot of them are discussed here, and you're also involved in things related to climate change and climate adaptation. And as the world increasingly gets more and more urbanized, do you see cities, if they follow your advice, let's say, do you see cities as part of the solution to a lot of these issues, or is it something that the world should be concerned about, that it will be more and more urbanized?
Yes. It's a great question, because I have to be modest here. I haven't studied myself the optimal spatial arrangement of a city, or if I would recommend let the city grow. You know, that part,
Like
I may have,
self-organized,
yeah, I have some intuitions, but I have not a clear answer. What we have been now is reacting to what we have, and the tendency was that to the complexities of the jobs and the new jobs, people was migrating to cities. Then, with limited capacity and shared supply, how we plan the demand better. So we were kind of reacting. I am now comparing with some cities from China, that they are really compact, and they are having now very efficient high-speed rail and transit system. And with the paradox of how different it is in the Bay Area, that we are increasing very fast the road networks miles, not the transit system. So
what about air quality? Is that improved in China as well as they get
that's
more
a
denser?
great question. No, I haven't studied that. That's a very good question. I did study how bad the air quality was and how unequal the exposure to air quality was in Beijing. But that would be a very interesting study. So I start now casting the mobility. Now we can see the trends in the individual mobility. I have not had this new rich amount of data to compare the trends of cities, but that is a very interesting open question. I do not have the answer if, because we are going to bigger cities, is that better or worse, or what is the ideal size of a city? And the network of cities in a country, yes.
And density as
yes,
well. And what kind
we
of
study,
transport.
yes, exactly. And it brought me the idea back to the Chinese cities, because we do metrics of density and the polycentrism of mobility and the concentration of jobs. So we have three variables to measure the urban form and compare cities around. And China stand for very compact cities compared to the US that are completely different. We have these two extremes. I think I can dare to say density is good, but density come also with other problems. So I don't have a good answer if we have a perfect way.
Something
I
to
have
study.
a secret view. I mean, like a view I haven't proved, but I think we can think about is European cities are so far as a urban planning, not like a physicist. You go to the cities, and in Europe are pretty good. So we need to put some order to quantify, to propose the best cities, but we need data to make it more evidence-based.
Yeah, and to be able to actually recommend it.
Yes.
Yeah. So when you imagine a sustainable city in the future, clean air, all these things, what is the energy source that you're imagining? Or does it vary based on each context?
Yes. No, we have been...
And I know you've done...
I don't know. Again, it's not the long term, but I have been working a lot in the transitions towards electric transportation. We call it in California shared, electric, and autonomous. That is one important in the shared part, right? Solar energy, electric cars is something I have been supporting because that has been a policy of the state, because we have definitely measured the perfect fluctuation of fuel cars travel and CO2 emissions. So that is a fact, and if we want to reduce emissions and even lower our dependency on oil, we need to go toward electricity. And then I said it's a policy of the state, because we need to also think on the life cycles of the battery, so the whole global economy.
The supply chain is pretty...
Yes,
pretty
that
rough,
part.
yeah.
But then there is a moment in which I have to say, I need to sometimes bound my research. So I am aware that the global economy of electrification, it needs to be studied to say, okay, we have to go this way. But while the policy is, let's say, electrification and solars, I do my best from the scale I work, that is at the city scale. But yes, it's always interesting to be sure about the energy market. That's a whole topic that is very important.
I know you've done some work on storage, energy storage for cities. I guess I just wonder if you and your group, or if just you think about it, what potentially advanced technologies as a primary source of energy might make cities more sustainable in the future, especially as they get denser or bigger.
Yes, the whole, we have a work on the tariff. Electricity tariff matters for people adopting solar panels and to make advantage of the sun. But then one aspect is the price of the batteries is helping us to do that. And then playing with the tariff, and then the price of the battery is the right way for several countries, in this case, to go into solar energy as an alternative. That is something I studied, but I haven't studied as a trend the sources of energies and what are the implications that all transportation becomes electric, what are the supply chain problems and the life cycle of what we do with all these batteries, or the renewal of the batteries. So that's a part that we need to be aware of.
Yeah, it's a big topic, and you mentioned China, and I in the back of this question, I wonder that China's expanding a lot their nuclear energy sector, and perhaps that will allow them to have cleaner air in their cities and larger cities, but developing world countries don't have access or policy to nuclear energy. California is very controversial in their approach to nuclear energy.
Exactly.
So I was just wondering what your perspective was. Perhaps nuclear fusion ends up
I can tell you, I was in an energy forum in Korea, in South Korea.
Yeah.
And we had people representing nuclear, and I am very aware that nuclear, in terms of amount of production of energy, is incredible. And in that panel, I was representing, this is for transportation, then I was representing solar and electric type of cars. So I am a little concerned of the safety of nuclear power to be able to be adopted by the world. So I think it's costly and complicated in its own way. So I don't think, probably we need to learn to diversify our sources of energy and think on those terms, I believe.
Sure. I would just think that in the whole context of sustainable cities and urban planning, that energy is kind of at the core of a lot of what you're working on as well.
Correct.
So must be.
Yes, clean energy is what we are aiming for.
Yeah,
yes,
certainly. Clean air, clean energy.
Yes.
Water as well. I mean,
Yes.
I guess you must work in waste management. All of these things are interrelated.
Yes.
So,
yes.
yeah. Yes, maybe we'll just conclude asking if you have any, just going back kind of full circle, any recommendations or inspirations or anything for Latin America. You know, I've worked a lot in Latin America as well. That's where we met, and I know your heart is still there, and a lot of what you work on, you hope it can be applied to the cities and the communities in Latin America. So do you have anything you'd like to share about that?
I cannot stress that enough. Education and workforce development. That is like responsible governments that really take that seriously as a mission, because that is the real equalizer. So I think those two words, education and workforce development for Latin America, prioritizing the use of our resources to do that, is what I hope, is what I am aiming for. And hopefully to do more from what I can.
Yeah, from your position to then impact positively. Yeah.
Exactly.
That's great. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Thank you. No, thank you.
Okay, thank
I
you very
enjoyed
much.
the interview.
Me as well. Thanks so much, Marta.
Thank you for joining us for this InterDialogue. You can subscribe to be notified of future episodes and by following us on our social media channels at The Interplex. Visit our website, theinterplex.org, for more interdisciplinary and intercultural content, and to join our growing collaborative community.